Hi guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Yosi and today I'm going to be talking about something that is quite sensitive to me, and it's about surviving sickle cell. And this is in line with September being Sickle Cell Awareness Month. And I want to do this in a bit to get people to be aware of what sickle cell is about, what living with sickle cell is about, and how you can make life better and more good for someone that is living with sickle cell. Anyway, so I want to draw you guys in and give you the gist. So let's get started. So I'll start first with how I discovered that I had sickle cell. Now, I was not the one who discovered that I had sickle cell. It was my parents, and this was when I was 6 months old. I had the hand and foot syndrome, which is a syndrome that causes the hands and the feet to swell up, and when you take your child to the hospital, it will be like some sort of signal to get them to test the child for the genotype and discover that the child has SS. So usually when you're born and for the first 6 months you don't go through crisis, you don't necessarily go through crisis until about 6 months when fetal hemoglobin, I think drops, and then you start beginning to experience what it's like to be SS. I think that's what God wanted to do, to preserve the child before the child starts getting hit by being SS. So anyway, by 6 months I had the hand and foot syndrome, and then my parents went to the hospital. They tested for sickle cell, and it was diagnosed that I had sickle cell anemia. So how do I see sickle cell and people living with sickle cell? Well, I like to define us as divine royals, and the reason for this is because I like to imagine that we were special people that lived in heaven longer than the rest. So we got used to the beautiful, classy, luxurious royal lifestyle of heaven. So when we were sent on earth for our beloved mission to the earth, the earth is not as classy and as great as heaven. So we have to kind of adjust, and because we lived longer in heaven, it became a bit difficult for us to adjust to this earth. And the earth is not really in the perfect state that would be good for us. So that's how I like to see it, that we are just special. We are royalty, and we are so sophisticated that any small thing just used to get us ill or something. So we have to adjust. So it's somewhat like Superman, who came from wherever and landed to earth and has to adjust. And of course we have our kryptonite, what do they call it? Yeah, kryptonite, that we react to, and we'll get to that later on. But that's how I like to see it. So I don't look at it as some sort of bad thing or evil. I just see it as us being special, and we're leaving this earth for a mission. So we're here for something, and we're just special people anyways. So that's how I like to look at it. We're actually warriors, and I also love that term being used for people with sickle cell, but I prefer divine royals. So the first thing is the rules. What do we have to do to live well with sickle cell? Now, the first rule is that we need to take a lot of water. So when people say you have to take 8 glasses of water, if you're with sickle cell, you just be laughing. I'm like, 8 glasses, spirit. Because people with sickle cell take, at least for me, I take about 4 to 5 liters of water daily. I mean liters, not glasses. 4 to 5 liters of water daily, and on a very bad day I'll take 3, and if it's really a very, very terrible day, maybe I'm sick or something, then I'll probably take 2. And of course they'll give me IV fluid by that time, because if I'm taking 2, I'm really, really ill. So usually every day I take about 4 to 5 liters of water daily. Now the second rule is that I have to stay away from extreme temperatures. So it mustn't be too hot or too cold. Remember that I said that we are divine royals, right? So I cannot stay in a place that is too cold or too hot. So when I get to a place where the AC is on and it's really cold, I would politely ask that it's reduced, or that at least I double up with sweater and try to keep myself warm. And if I go out and it's a bit hot, I try to wear something that's a bit lighter, so that I don't get dehydrated by losing a lot of water. I remember that I said water is the key. Then the next thing is that I stay away from stress. But living in Nigeria, living in Nigeria with sickle cell, well, can you really get away from stress? I don't think so. So we try to mitigate stress to the barest minimum. So stay away from stress. Don't do things that will get you too stressed. This is why I actually stopped sports. But just stay away from stress and reduce anything that will cause you stress, be it physically, be it emotionally. Stay away from stress. And then the next one is take your drugs diligently. You have drugs that we take every day, and that gets me to drugs. There are certain number of drugs that we take, and it's annoying that we have to take that every day, but I mean, we've got to live, and we've got to live to like 120, so we have to take the drugs. The first one is folic acid. Folic acid is super important. We have to take B complex. We have to take, for me, I take also B12. And then there's multivitamins. Then we have paludrin. Paludrin is especially for, someone and preventing you from having malaria, because malaria is one major way that we can actually fall ill, and also taking vitamin C to prevent infections, and because of our genotype we are more susceptible to having infections, so we have to be extra careful, and that's why we take a lot of fruits and vegetables and all of those things. And then the next one is hydroxyurea. Hydroxyurea is also important. Now, some people take it, some people don't, but majority of people will take hydroxyurea as it's very good to reduce the sickle cell level. But I know that in the US there are other drugs that I would say are, I think, superior to hydroxyurea, but they have not yet reached Nigeria. So Nigerian people, please help us to get these drugs here. And there are some other drugs that I have not also listed, but like, let's say Jubilee, astimine. Astimine is for blood, so that at least, because we can't take iron, so we can't take iron tablets or ferrous and all those things, so astimine is what comes close. But we take a lot of fruits and vegetables, or I try to take as much as possible, but that vegetable, I'm not really, that vegetable is not my thing, so I try to make it into a smoothie, but not that we'll take ugu. Ugu has iron. I actually learned that recently, that ugu has iron, and we shouldn't take that. So we shouldn't take stuff that has so much iron anyway. So those are the rules and the drugs that we take, and we have to abide by. So the next thing is growing up with sickle cell. Now, the first thing that I would like to say is that I was blessed. I am still blessed with amazing parents that are my rock and my support, and that's what made growing up and even my adult life to be on point. My parents always reminded me that you're not a stress to me, you are not a problem to me, I can never get tired of you. So, and that gave me a lot of boost, because they always increased my confidence, let me know that you are good, you are on point, there's nothing wrong with you, you are actually thriving, nothing should hinder you. And they always gave me the ginger that I needed to face everybody. So childhood, growing up, yes, I used to fall ill a lot, but not that badly. Like, I used to fall ill, but I used to skip school some days, normal typical sickle cell crisis things. I encountered that, and that went on. I remember a particular day when I lived in 1004, by the way. So there was a particular time, because there are a lot of people on the floor, hence the name 1004. There are 1004 houses, I guess. So on my floor there are lots of children, and we normally play race and all those kind of things. So my brother, my sisters, neighbors' kids, they were all doing relay. You run to one end of the corridor to the next, and that's how Yosi, beloved Yosi, joined the race. That's how I went to, you're supposed to run to one end of the wall, hit it and turn back. That's how I went to run to the end of the wall, and I hit it and I turned back. When I got home, I realized my hand was like this. I had to go to the hospital that time. I would say, who sent you to run? So that's why I said, stress, don't do stress, don't exert yourself too much. So I stressed myself, I hit my hand on the wall, I ran back, so my hand gone like this. So it was for, I think, about 10 days that I spent in the hospital that period. My hand was like this, because the pain, the crisis was that much that I couldn't bring my hand down until it finally left. and I didn't have any like terrible like severely bad crisis until my adult life. And that brings me to adult life living with sickle cell. So when I became older, I had a bit more, complications living with sickle cell. Not that terrible, but complications with sickle cell anyway. So the first one was, I think, okay, there was a particular time that I was really ill. I had a pain crisis from, I think, Sunday till about Wednesday. I was really ill. I was in Unilag as at then, and so I had to be admitted. From then on, the pain wasn't going. They gave me, you know, painkillers upon painkillers upon painkillers. I mean, injections. It wasn't working. In fact, that was by that time that I actually slumped because painkillers were much. So they said they were going to transfer me to Luz, but I knew that there was no way I was going to Luz. So I had a doctor in Ibobi that was treating me then, so I went with him. And when I got there, they set me down. I was still in a lot of pain as at then. I was still having crisis, right? So when I got there, the guy said, you know what, I think we should do a blood exchange. That was the first time ever that I heard of a blood exchange. So they did that for me, and immediately, at least for the first time, I was able to sleep, but I was still in pain, so they had to do it like a second time, and that was it. So that was like my major crisis. The second major crisis that I had was when I had acute chest syndrome. Now that's the terrible something. So I had that. It's like you're having pain in your chest that you cannot breathe. So like you cannot breathe well, you cannot really take in a deep breath. So it's really terrible. So I was like that, I couldn't breathe at all, and it was super painful to go through. Anyway, so I had that. I was taken to the hospital. I was taken to Luz at that time. I went to Luz. That is Luz is good, but the environment there can make you depressed because people just be dying left, right, and center. But I had no choice but to stay there. But they treated me well, and I was able to, recover and move on with my life. And then the last major one was, I think it was actually this year. I had a serious crisis, and I went to the hospital. Now the problem with with sickle cell is that sometimes you have issues with your vein where they cannot find your vein, and you need vein for them to be able to insert drip like fluid into you, right? And because they couldn't find my vein, they tried everywhere. They pricked. I mean, I say try everywhere, that means they are pricking you multiple times, like more than 10 times. They're pricking you, trying to find the vein. They're pricking you. Oh, it's not working. You'll check another place. I'm like, can't hospitals in Nigeria just get a vein finder, for God's sake, and let us rest? They shall pricks me everywhere for the first day, second day, third day. They did not find vein. That's how I think my brother, who is a medical student, that one has vexed that they should go and do central line for this girl. Can't you see that she's in pain for like 3 days straight? So they now finally did central line for me and everything. Central line is like putting a vein into like the biggest vein, somewhat like a mini surgery. So they did that, put the vein there, they gave me fluid, they gave me blood, save everything. Then I was fine. I was able to go home. That was like those actually were the three major that I can remember as at now. The three major crises that I had, but I'm fine. So also, that I said something about blood exchange. Now, there are two types of things that can help someone with sickle cell. That's kind of major, which is transfusion. So if you have like a low PCV, you'll be transfused so that you get like enough blood, and then you'll be fine. And then the second one is the blood exchange. So if you're having like frequent crisis, like over and over, or you're having crisis for a very long period of time and it's not going down, then they can give you a blood exchange. Blood exchange is like diluting your blood somewhat. So they will remove like a pint, at least the one I've done, they remove a pint of your blood and they'll put like 2 pints of AA blood. So it's kind of like you're living in an AA or AS kind of state, so you're fine for like about 6 months. And I know that they do a bit more intense ones in the Sickle Cell Foundation, where they change about 8 pints of blood, but I don't really think that I want to go for that because I think that's a bit extreme. Although I heard that they say it's good. I'm not sure. I'm not a doctor, so I cannot give you advice on that, but I shall know that blood exchange can be quite good for you, but it's not something that you'll be doing every month and say every 6 months answer the blood exchange so that you will not have crisis. I wish it was that easy, but you are not allowed to be doing that because it also has a side effect too. Then okay, so the next thing I want to talk about is adult life, working, dating, that kind of thing being S's. So working, first of all, I noticed that working for someone, especially if it's not probably a multinational, would be somewhat difficult, because if you're having crisis, or a period where you're having frequent crisis, it's quite difficult for your boss to understand. And I can understand it based off of the fact that I own my own business. And imagine if I need you to work in my company and you're off for like 2 weeks. It's sort of like so I can get it, but I also expect that people would also understand that this person too is not enjoying the fact that they are not feeling fine, and be a bit more understanding. I was lucky at least to have people understood for a while, but at some point, scoring started happening. I'm just kidding, but at some point, I got some feedback that I didn't really like. It was somewhat like they were trying to hinder my progress, or not give me what I'm due, and using the fact that I maybe fell ill more than other people in the office, and I didn't really like that. And I remember one time someone was saying that I think one of my bosses said, if you fall ill more than 3 days, then salary will be cut. And I'm like, sorry, am I going to plan the timetable and say, just you're not going to be ill for more than 3 days, you are going to, and that was 3 days in a year. And I was like, brother, don't say you don't want to pay me, because there is no how there is no how that somebody will not fall sick for up to 3 days if your SS is there is not deceive ourselves. If it happens to you, as in God be praised, so, but it's quite difficult that somebody with SS will not fall ill up to more than 3 times 3 days in a whole year. Come on. So that's a bit difficult. And also the fact that you're in the office, the AC is on, and it's somewhat difficult to tell your other colleagues that, okay, please reduce the AC. Some of them, they do as if they have AC in their house, and they don't have AC in their house. I'm shading somebody right now. They will do as if they have AC in their house, and they don't have. So when you tell them to reduce the AC, they will be saying, no, it's a bit hot here. And see, you don't have AC in your house. But so you cannot impose. So what I just usually do would be to get sweater, to get, pashpina, to get anything that I can use to cover myself up, so that I at least quite cozy and warm and, all right. And that's been it. And I usually come to the office with flasks. So I usually have like flask of either tea or pap that I'm always drinking. And anybody that wants to faint should faint. But I will drink my tea or my pap, and I'll feel good. And in terms of dating, so first thing first, I don't date. I don't really believe in dating. But what I would say is that when I meet people that I know that are interested in me, and once I just bring up that sickle cell something, the way they will disappear is like vanishing. I say you should vanish. Like you just see them disappearing small. Like I'm like, okay, even if we're not going to date, like we're not going to marry, but can't we be friends at least? Is it that bad? It's not contagious. Like, can you relax? So I don't know why they just disappear, but I think it's lack of understanding and awareness about sickle cell, because they just feel like, okay, since I'm not going to date you, then or whatever the case may be, or maybe they feel like you're sickly, they don't want your wala or something, I don't know, but they just double back up. I remember the last one that I experienced was someone in my church. Yes, I'm shading you, and that is when I'm shading. So I met this guy, and he's a worker in the church. So that's how we're gisting and everything. We used to gist, we used to talk a lot. Like we're talking a lot that period, and so it got to that point, because I normally ask about your genotype, because I cannot be catching feelings, and then after I've caught the feelings I'm already planning wedding in my head. Then you not come and jackpot. So from the beginning, let me know. So I told the guy that what's the genotype and everything, and he asked me about mine. And from that day on, when I told him, he was actually very sweet. Like he was like, no, that doesn't mean anything. It's fine, it's good, everything is okay. Like, I mean, we can still hang out, we can still be friends. Next day, no call. Next day, no call. He just started to go back. Me, I'm laughing because as I said earlier, I'm very thankful for the kind of parents that I have. Like, I have love so much that I can't take mediocre love. Like, it can't work. So I have so much love in my system that, I mean, if you're not ready, if you're not going to love me with all of everything, like, I mean, love me, die, then I beg, just be going. I don't need it. Like, I'm fine where I am. I am surrounded with too many people who love me too much that I cannot even take mediocre love and everything. So I'm blessed. I've been really blessed. And I would just advise really that you surround yourself with people who really love you, your parents, your siblings, those who are actually there for you. So I touched base on sickle cell crisis and, the pain and everything. But I also want to touch base on some complications that can happen. I mentioned one before, which was the acute chest syndrome when I was talking about my major pain crisis. But the second one that I had was osteoporosis of the hip, and that is when you need a hip replacement, basically. So it's a necrosis of the hip where so the best way I can explain it would be like, your hip, there's a ball and socket joint. What am I doing? There's a ball and socket joint, shasha. So when there's a necrosis, like, blood doesn't flow very well to the is it ball or the socket? Trying the socket. Anyway, one of them, blood shall not flow into this one. So at some point, this one begins to chip off and it's no longer, moving well. So there's a lot of friction that causes a lot of pain. And this is the reason why blood doesn't flow there, because probably you've had crisis there that has sort of blocked the flow there. So that causes a lot of friction there, so it begins to eat at the hip joint and everything. And that was what happened. And it started with the right leg at first, I guess. Yeah, right leg first, and it kept on, and it was not funny. I could not, it was just getting worse and worse. I couldn't walk well at some point. I was using a normal stick, walking stick. From then on, I went to elbow crutch. From then on, I was using like the full crutches. I couldn't walk, and I was in final year at that time, and I had already planned that I was going to rock that final year, but the devil wanted to spoil everything for me, but lie. Anyway, so I couldn't walk at some point. In fact, it got to a point where I could barely even move, because they knew me as ouch in my house, because every movement was ouch, because it was that painful. There was a particular time that I got to the hospital, and I told the doctor that I was in a lot of pain, and the annoying doctor now said, you don't know what you are going through. The pain cannot go. Even if you take like 10 paracetamol and 8 Skinicon, it cannot work. And I was like, can't you even have some sort of sympathy or something? Like, I just smiled and I went away, and then I went to go and cry later. But I was so pissed. The doctors need to be like reorientated. Like, I don't know what to use, but they need to be taught. They need to go back to school and train them on how to actually talk to people, especially in Nigeria. They need to learn, because they don't know how to talk, especially in that Ibobi. They don't know how to talk. So that was really painful for me. And then I later on had to have my hips replaced, and I must shade somebody. There was this doctor who was the head of orthopedic surgeons then in Ibobi. I was so pissed, because when I went to meet him about, wanting to do, I actually even paid for the surgery, but they didn't have the prosthesis and stuff like that. And this guy, and I went to ask him, because I later found out that there was another method of doing the hip replacement. So I wanted to find out if they were doing that and, try to know what the methods they were using was. This guy just shouted at me and was so rude and told me that if I don't want to do it, I should go. There are a lot of people that are lining up. By the way, truly, there are a lot of people that were waiting to do the surgery. That means a lot of people are going through this thing. That's why people should know about what people with sickle cell are going through, and donate one thing or the other to foundations in charge of all these things. Anyway, this guy was so rude, and I ended up not doing it in Iwobi. I left the country to do it, and praise Master Jesus, I did. I'm going to be gisting you later about this hip replacement in another video, because I don't want to go into that now, but I'm going to be gisting in my subsequent videos about this hip replacement and how I got away with doing it in a very good place that I can stick at work, and I'm not limping with one leg higher than the rest and them spoiling someone's life, because they really dealt with people's lives in that Ibobi. I'm saying it now, so nobody should go there if you can try to even manage to get out of this country, because even the price is not that much greater. Anyway, So that was that. So I had to have my hips replaced. I had both hips replaced, and I'm doing very, very fine. I'm working well. There's no problem. I'm not limping. Nothing. I can bend down. I can squat. I can do anything, which were the things that they said I was not going to be able to do if I did it in a bobby. Yes, I'm shading them again. And now to the last one, being able to stay sane and okay and survive the sickle cell. And why did I use this term surviving? Because I'm actually surviving it. And I want to say that it has not been by my power alone, it has been by God's grace. And I want to say this, see, going through sickle cell is not funny. It's not easy at all, because there's that mental state of always wondering, if I go out now, would I come back in pain? And when you know the last pain that you had, you kind of feel like, should I go out? Because anything can happen, or you can just go out. In fact, there's a particular time that I was gisting with someone, and while I was gisting, like, I was actually having a good time, and immediately it started. So it can happen anytime. Sometimes it gives you signals that, oh, I'm coming on. Sometimes it doesn't. So it somewhat makes you constantly be in a state of care, and you're always trying to gauge what you're doing so that you don't stress yourself. You are always being extra careful. But it also makes you in a state where sometimes you're thinking that, why me, like, what did I ever do to deserve this? Because the pain is intense. And I will say this, sickle cell pain, I've heard from people who are sickle cell divine royals and warriors who have had children. I will tell you that sometimes the pain can be worse than childbirth. Imagine me telling you that I had pain for 3 days straight. I mean, yes, people have labor for that long, but and in these times, I'm sure they will have even done CS for you. But imagine you having that much pain for days and it's not going. Sometimes you can have pain for a week and more, where a particular point in your body, like maybe I remember one day my leg, I had so much pain in my leg that I could not move for like a whole week. I couldn't move. So it can be quite intense, and the way I can survive has only been through God and through having amazing parents and siblings. Surviving sickle cell has not been my power alone, but simply by God's grace. And I believe that the God factor has been what has actually helped me through. And I say this because there are times when it gets really depressing and it gets really sad, where you're asking, why me? What did I ever do to deserve this? I don't have to go through this pain. What's all this about? And then I just trust that God has a perfect plan for me and that He's working something in my life. And I know one thing, that Scripture says that He will not tempt us beyond what we are able to bear. So if God has allowed me to be able to go through this, it means I can bear and I can overcome and I can survive through it. So I'm still going to trust God that I can have a change of genotype, that He can actually change my genotype, but pending when He chooses to do so, I am still going to depend on Him and I'm still going to trust Him. And I know that He loves me, He cares for me, and He's there with me in every single pain and every single cry. My parents have been a huge source of support and strength for me, and so have been my siblings as well. And also because of God, because when I look at everything, I still look at God, and God has always been saying, see, I will shine my light through you, that the world will see that it has been me whose glory has been revealed in your life. Because everything that I have achieved, everything that I have been through, everything, it's just been God. Because if it wasn't God, I wouldn't be here. That's the honest truth. But I thank Him for every day. And I know that He's still doing marvelous things in my life. This is not the end. This is not the last bus stop. I am still shining and I'm still surviving and I'm still, radiating God's glory and God's blessings. So anytime I look back at anything, I can say God has been faithful. God has been great. It has just been God. I have too much blessings to count, that I know that every step of the way, God has always shown Himself as my God. So I also want to encourage anybody who is going through sickle cell and feeling so tired, feeling like, how do I go over this? Feeling like everything is down. Trust me, there are days that it's bad, but you know that God is with you. That God factor, I'm going to be honest, you cannot do without it. You need that God factor, because it is that God factor that will give you joy even in the midst of the pain. It is that God factor that will give you strength even when you feel like throwing in the towel. It is that God factor that will let you know that there's a bright future ahead, and you will see above that. Because God has given me certain pictures in my head when I was going through like the worst crisis, and I saw that, and I told my mom, and I just said to my mom that you are going to I shall give her the gist, and I don't want to say it yet, but I'll give that testimony when it's time. And I told her that this is going to happen. So because it has not happened, I know that I'm fine. I know that it is well. So that God factor is there. When you have God with you, everything is a whole lot better. Everything is a new color, and you know that even if the worst happens and you go, you know that you are going to be in a place where there is not going to be any pain again. You're going to have eternity with God, and you know that you have that surety. So I am not afraid of anything. I know that sometimes it can be scary, but I know that I know whom I trust, and I know that it is well with me. So I don't want to turn this into like a preaching section and anything, but I want to just encourage people with sickle cell to know that it's not bad, and that I want to also encourage those, even those who are not with sickle cell, or those with sickle cell who are a bit buoyant, to try to donate to help those who don't have much. For example, I have a project called Divine Royals. As I said, the name, I told you the inspiration for that earlier in this video. And Divine Royals, I'm actually setting out to ensure that there's a first response center for people with sickle cell, because the major issue that I know that I have faced is knowing where to go when I have a crisis. Most private hospitals are very expensive, and not the average person with sickle cell will be able to afford that. And those who can afford that will have to go to the general hospital or to Luth. Now Luth don't have space. Like, I've been to Luth before when I had like serious chest issues, like I was having a major crisis, and they did not even let me through. I went to the Sickle Cell Foundation. They said they didn't have oxygen. I went through a lot during that period, and they didn't let me in. I had to look for a private hospital to go through. So I know that these things happen now. That's because I can afford to even go to a private hospital. Now, how much more someone who doesn't have somewhere that they can go to, or who can't even afford that? So they are stuck with having to plead and beg. And I've actually lost a classmate because of that kind of negligence. So I would say, and I would really plead that we donate this. It's good for us to create that first response center where someone can go that has a crisis and get attended to without having to pay anything or having to pay much at all. Very subsidized, and so that people can at least know where to go, because sometimes you just need fluid for a day and then you're done and you go. But what happens is that people now start self-medicating, which can be really dangerous. So if you know you are interested in that, I'll put the link where you can donate. It's down in the description box, and I'm going to be using that, and I'm going to be very transparent. I'm going to acknowledge it and acknowledge what comes in, and I'm going to be accountable to tell you what every single dime has been spent on, so that you know that it's not just entering to my pocket either. So thank you so much for listening to this, and I hope I have in some way been able to give you some knowledge about sickle cell, and I will be shedding more light on this subject matter and other things that are related to it later on. So stay tuned to this channel. I hope you would subscribe down so that you can enjoy other amazing content that I have. Thank you, and have a great week. Bye.